Hello, my name is John Pontifex, and you are watching another edition of Break the Silence, which is the Aid to the Church in Need podcast series, which looks at the questions that surround the topic of persecution of Christians, issues relating to the nature of religious freedom, and how specifically it impacts upon those parts of the world where Christians suffer for their faith. And one such country is, of course, the country of Pakistan, where in various different ways Christians suffer institutionalized discrimination in different respects and outbreaks of persecution. And I myself have travelled to Pakistan on a number of occasions over the best part of 18 or so years. And I have travelled as well to the Diocese of Faisalabad, where last year I met Father Bonnie Mendes, who I'm very delighted to say is with me in our studio here at Aid to the Church Needs headquarters in the UK in Sutton, Surrey. So Father Bonnie is most welcome to Break the Silence. It's lovely to have you with us.
Thank you.
By way of introduction, I might say that Father Bonnie has been a priest for more than 60 years.
Right.
And I won't exactly tell you his age, but he is of very long-standing experience in the country of Pakistan, and in particular in his work involving the support for religious minority communities, especially his own community of the Christian community. He has been an incredible champion in terms of acting and promoting and supporting in different ways the rights of a very often downtrodden, disenfranchised community. And he has an enormous amount of experience to share with us. And his message over all those 60 years remains, despite all the difficulties, one of great hope. And that hope is enabled through, among other organisations, Aid to the Church in Need. So I've got a quote here that I've shared with Father Bonnie, which I will repeat again, which is something that he said a few years back, which I felt was very telling about his ministry over those 60 years in Pakistan, in the Diocese of Faisalabad and elsewhere. He said, "The mission of my life has been to work as much as possible for the redemption of the underprivileged and marginalised groups, including women, children, and low-paid workers." I thought this was a very telling overview that pinpoints so much of what Father Bonnie has sought to achieve over his many years. And I thought I'd begin by asking you, Father, what more you'd like to say on this topic of acting on and enabling the redemption of these underprivileged and marginalized groups.
Wherever you go and wherever you travel, you find different marginalized groups. But you cannot apply the same solution in two different places or two different times. Times change very fast. People living in different conditions are living in totally different reasons. They've got themselves caught into very difficult circumstances. And therefore, it's very hard to give a general sort of remedy. But wherever we go, especially in the last few years, there have been new tensions in different countries. And we are facing them. And in Pakistan, definitely we have them. And we have to find new solutions to the problem. I don't know the solution very often. Afterwards, hindsight, everybody says, we should have done this and we should have done that. But foresight, you ask somebody what to do, then nobody can tell you what to do.
No, the problem is too deep-seated.
Yeah.
But what would you... we've been looking at Aid to the Church in Need, at the question of persecution and discrimination of Christians in the country there for many years. And in terms of trying to put our finger on the nature of the problem, we thought we'd ask, to what extent, if at all, do you think the problem of persecution or discrimination against Christians and other religious minorities in Pakistan is getting worse? Is it getting worse, do you think? And if so, in what ways?
It is getting worse in the sense, before they only attacked our institutions. but now they are also attacking individuals. And when there are many individuals attacked, then the problem really becomes big, because some of them are attacked in the places of worship, others in places of work, still others in where they're studying in schools and colleges. So things are getting worse at different levels. And you can feel it from day to day, especially if you're living in the parish and students come and talk to you. When you visit houses, people tell you the problems they're facing. You see each year things getting worse in that sense. I can really feel it as working in a parish or working with people.
Right. And what would you suggest are the main causes of that increase? Why is it getting worse?
I think this began especially in Pakistan with the Islamization of society. It began in 1977 when Ziaul Haq became the president of the country, and to rule, he took the support of the Muslim clerics, and to get their support, he introduced all kinds of laws. One of them was there was always a law not to attack another religion or hurt the feelings of others. But then he introduced 295B and C. 295B was if desecration of the Holy Quran, and 295C, speaking against the Prophet, was blasphemy. And whether it was by word, by insinuation, written on, or by just anything of acting, you could be persecuted. So you didn't really need concrete proof, because two people would say he said some or she said something, and that was it. The other person has to go to jail. And it has happened, literally happened in many cases, and continues to happen. But now they are finding another way. They said, now we can't prove that one, but we at least, if we take out a page of the Quran, no matter who takes it out, he said, this poor person did it. And tore the Holy Quran.
Yes, if they so-called desecrate the Quran.
Yeah,
yes, the Quran.
But actually, I mean, that person doesn't even own the Quran.
No.
So, but the mob gets so violent, and that is the frightening thing now. It's not merely the law, but it's the people who have become very violent.
Yes.
And they have taken the law into their own hands, and the government seems to be unable to control them, the mob.
Yes, and a lot of the challenges are to do with the way these militant groups, this militant tendency, is such that the authorities can't always contain it, can't always control it, and they are powerless sometimes in the face of it. But we wanted specifically to talk about the plight of younger Christians, and we wanted to ask, in what ways do you think children suffer in Pakistan if they're Christian?
I think it begins already in school education.
Right.
Where a Muslim student studying Islamiyat gets 20 marks. And the Christians have no subject, so they lose out on 20 marks. And because of that, the Muslim students go far ahead. That when they come to getting admission to the universities for higher studies, they have an advantage because they have those 20 marks. And even if the Christian has done very well in studies and almost full marks in the other subjects, but those 20 marks you lose out completely. So that is one kind of discrimination that is taking place.
Our Red Wednesday campaign is calling on the UK to do more to help Christian children, recognising their individual plight, and recognising too that the UK is giving a huge amount of aid to Pakistan, and yet we understand that the priorities set by the government for the ODA, for the Overseas Development Aid, are to do with gender, helping girls, and there's a lot to be, obviously that's very important work, support in response to climate change, and other help in terms of humanitarian support and investment. But nowhere do we see an emphasis on religious minorities. Nowhere do we see an emphasis on religious minority children. Do you think that is something that should be prioritized, and if so, why?
Whenever we speak to people coming from the embassies, they always say we are looking at it from human rights point of view. Mm-hmm. That's it. We're not looking at the religion. But we are trying to tell them within the society it is such that the human rights of the Christian, they're suffering much more. Mm-hmm. And they're deprived of many things, like drinking water in some places, in some schools and colleges, mm-hmm. Or even job opportunities. Like I knew a very good driver. Laraka went to college in Toba Texing. They didn't look at religion, they looked at driving, and they said he's been chosen. And then the principal came to know that he's Christian. And immediately he said, I can't keep him.
Wow.
Because the Muslim staff doesn't want to eat and drink with him. So that is it, he lost his job.
He lost his job.
Within one day, he was asked to go home. So these kind of discriminations take place. And when the embassy staff comes, they don't meet such people.
No.
They don't know the local language. They meet some well-to-do people and they make their decisions.
Yes, yes.
And they don't keep funds for this kind of lower layer members of society, including women and children who are deprived, or low-paid workers who are deprived. Yeah. So this, I think, that aid is given and given through the government. The government again, the local government itself is discriminating against these people. So these poor Christians are deprived once again, or the poor Hindus are deprived as well.
Yes.
It's not merely the Christians, but also the poor Hindus.
Yes, and as we were saying earlier, before we sat down for this interview, we talked about the Ahmadi Muslims as well.
That's true. They are suffering tremendously. I mean, first they said they should not have the same type of jobs, and then they said that the places of worship, that the mosque shouldn't have the minarets according that as Islam has it. Now this year, just a couple of months ago, was the festival Eid al-Azha, the slaughtering of the goats, and they said the Ahmadiyas could not do it, though there is a judgment that they can do it within the four walls of their own houses, but even they were not allowed to buy goats. They were not allowed to slaughter goats.
Goodness.
So they are discriminated against, and their discrimination goes down to different levels. And they don't get promotions if they are in armed forces or anywhere else. Once they come to know the Ahmadiyas, they have to be pushed out.
Yeah, yeah. But we've also got an understanding that Article 25A of the Constitution is a key factor that can be called upon to help to reimpose and reassert the equality and parity between different religious groups. You feel, I understand quite strongly, that constitutional article should be acted out in terms of enforcement of rights.
Before I could answer that, I'd like to mention that the Constitution itself also has various things, clauses that are discriminatory. The Ahmadiyas, for instance, were declared non-Muslims. So they were deprived of their right to vote as equal citizens. Secondly, we had another kind of discrimination is that people don't have the equal opportunities that the Article 25 says. In Pakistan now, a Prime Minister or a President has to be a Muslim only, which deprives the common citizen of becoming a president of the country. If he or she is a Christian or Ahmadiyya or a Hindu, cannot join. So the Constitution itself has become very controversial. But this one, there is an opportunity, 25A, where help can be given to promote there's citizenship, but it's not being used.
Well, this is very sad to hear. But we also know that against all these challenges and difficulties, there's also the strong sense in which over the years there have been remarkable figures in Pakistan who've been beacons of hope for the Christian community. I wondered, over your many, many years of service to the community, if you'd like to single out, it may be invidious so to do, but maybe there are one or two individuals you think might be worthy of highlighting for those listening as being particularly instrumental or courageous in terms of standing up for their community.
Bishop John Joseph, the late Bishop John Joseph, who sacrificed his life in May 1997, is one example. He stood up anywhere you went. Whenever there was some kind of evictions, whether it was day or night, he was willing to go there and stand. I had a case of a person who was killed, and the Muslims are coming out against the Christians in Jang, one of the cities of Pakistan. And middle of the night he came there and he made a speech, a strong speech before anybody. He says, we will not allow this to happen. And I think the people get courage with that kind of leadership. But, there was another one, is Clement Shabazz Bhatti. He was a good student, and when he decided to have a group, he called it Christian Liberation Front, and he came to me for blessing. I said, why on earth did you name it Christian Liberation Front? You should have made it more general. Yours is for liberation of all people. But then they had already named it, and he only came for the blessing after that. But then as he went along, the discrimination he found was everywhere in society. But the Christians were deprived more and more. And when he stood up for the Christians, in the end he was martyred in Islamabad. So this kind of martyrdom is taking place. And there are others also who have either they were lucky to escape or they had to leave the country. When they speak up, they speak up very strongly. They are asked to leave the country.
And this makes your willingness to share your testimony and your principles and your defence of the liberty and the rights of your individual communities so powerful, that you're willing to do this against a very real awareness of the challenges facing those who do stand up.
Maybe I say, what have I to lose if something does happen? I'm an old man by myself. Whereas others, family members, I'm single. I'm a celibate, so it doesn't matter so much. But for others, it's really very hard.
Very hard indeed.
When they are, heading a family or the members of a family, then it is something that they have to really be concerned about.
And the Aid to the Church in Need, who you've worked with over many years and who we've come and visited. Aid to the Church in Need has come and visited in Pakistan, has worked very closely with bishops, with priests, with sisters, with lay faithful, and has sought to enable the Church to continue its mission, to be a voice of obviously the gospel, but also a voice that brings people together and finds a way to stand up for human rights, but also to provide a focal point for people to gather around principles of truth and of justice, peace and of harmony. What would you say about the value of the work that Aid to the Church in Need has carried out over that time that you've known the organisation?
As I mentioned earlier, governments tend to be very, limited in their scope of work. They would like to reach out to people, but they depend very much on their officers or the ministers, and the funds are given through them. And very often the funds do not reach the Christians. But when Church in Need comes, They go to meet different sectors of society, but they also meet many of the Christians, not merely the bishops and priests or sisters, but they only go and meet a few people in those. And then they find, they see for themselves the running water has reached a certain houses, but the last few houses are Christian, they don't have water. They see the problem, and then they say, no, but they should also get a connection of water. Can be helped, or they don't have place of worship. All the others have, but they do not have a place of worship. So they say, we are willing to help. If the people are willing to put in so much, we will also chip in and make sure they get whether they get education or whether they get some other forms of development, they do chip in. So that is why I find Church in Need very helpful, and especially because they also meet lay people and talk to them. Otherwise, ours can be also a very clerical church. And despite all the talk of synodality, things don't move when it comes to the power of the clergy. So moving the clergy, or even some nuns, the top level okay, but the other ones do not have the liberty of really working at the grassroots level. So lay people you have to find new voices, form new groups among university students, among workers, among farmers. You need to find fisher folk in another group. Try to find people that can really coordinate things among themselves and find apostolates that are effective at that level.
Well, one of the things that we've done, of course, is to support this new community, this new plot of land that's been opened up outside Faisalabad, which is there especially for Christians, many of them coming from brick kiln backgrounds, who are coming away from that situation of slavery, bonded labour, and starting afresh in these new communities, one of which, of course, is named after yourself, Bonnie Mendes, and where Aid to the Church in Need has been delighted to erect some houses for retired catechists. Pakistan has a wonderful tradition of lay catechists working in very, very disparate communities all around, particularly the Punjab. And one of our great projects, which I saw for myself, were these houses for the catechists. And in another such community, we're building a church. And what would your message of thanks be to the benefactors who've made all this possible?
I think we've been saying it often, and we've been writing about it to thank the benefactors. But I think they have been so very generous that we cannot say thank you loud enough that it reaches all. But we would like to really thank them for their generosity. And whenever you have such people who have some funds, they should be giving to organizations like Church in Need. Church in Need is helping us and is willing to do much more. So if they have the funds, they will do more, I know. Not only Pakistan, but it's Vietnam, Bangladesh. There are other countries that have, Myanmar, countries have had a lot of problems. And because I worked at the Asian level, I know that there are different churches and different sectors of society, different communities, various caste system and other kinds of discriminations. So the Church in Need goes and tries to help out to reach out new solutions.
Well, thank you very much for sharing those thoughts, Father. You've been watching Break the Silence. I'm John Pontifex. This is Father Bonnie. It's been lovely to be with you today.
And I'd like to say thank you very much, and thank you for having me on this show.
Thank you.
God bless you.